Hi there, everyone, and hello to all you at the Heart Activated Parenting event. I'm sure you're having a great time. I want to thank Ruth Ann and her team for allowing us to do this video since we are out of town, and I'm sure you're having a fantastic time. And we're going to be talking about, well, first of all, those that don't know, I'm Jerry, and this is
Angie, and hello to everyone.
And so that's who we are, and we are life language experts, and we're going to be talking about parenting and how life languages fits into that, and particularly heart activated parenting, because that's the best kind. So again, thank you, and let's get going. Probably the best thing you can do for your children in the terms of parenting as well as everything else is to have a solid, solid marriage, solid foundation for marriage. So the children need to see that their parents are unified, that they know what they're doing, they're going together, that they love each other, and all of this is how you present yourself to your children, because
Children will learn by what they see. And if they see that you have a strong marriage and that you love each other, you're giving them a good example, because what they need is love and security. And what better way to give it to them than to have them see their mom and dad love each other and care for each other and love them also as a complete unit, as a complete family.
you know, children are not part of your marriage. They're part of your family, but not part of your marriage. They're a product of the marriage. Now, that's the natural, if you're adopted or inherited or anything else. Of course, that's a little different, but you must maintain your marriage first, because the children will eventually grow up, hopefully, and hopefully they grow up and leave. Millennials today like to stay home forever, but the purpose of having the children is to train them to grow up and be productive citizens in society. They would have integrity, moral fortitude, and honesty, and all the things that you want, whether they're engineer or a school teacher or a politician, excuse my cursing. But you know, you want somebody, if you're going to vote for somebody, you want somebody that you know stands upright, not just in it for themselves. End of political comments. So that's why the children are so important. So Angie, you want to talk?
Well, also, you want to train these children to be good moms or dads or wives or husbands. So that's why the example of a good marriage is so important. And if you don't train your children, they're going to train you. And I have a couple examples. One is having your children or your child sleep with you, whether it starts when they're infants or possibly when they're a little older, and then you try when they're 2, 3, 4 years old to get them out of your bed. And what do? No, they want to stay with mommy and daddy. So you didn't train them; they trained you. And also another example is a child that gets up in the middle of the night for a bottle, and the child is a year and a half old. Well, that child was training the mom. The mom wasn't training the child. And so to break that, it was us. We had to stop giving that child a bottle at 1 a.m. in the morning. And in a matter of 3 days, it was broken. But he trained us. We didn't train him. And so this is so important, because when your children get to be teenagers, you want to make sure that you have trained them, because if not, they will show you how they have trained you.
Yeah, and earplugs helped us a lot. But you know, Angie's right. When they get to be a little bit older, and they know what will get you to do what they want, because they've trained you to do that. And you might think, well, gee, they're not smart enough to do that. Yes, they are. They've learned by practice, and they learn, hey, this gets the job done, so this is what I'm going to do. So you want to be very active. You have to be very active in the training of your children right from the get-go. Remember, in the womb, they had everything they needed. food, comfort, warmth, roof over their head, if you will. Then when they're birthed, first thing they get is a slap on the rear end to get lungs coming out of the air. The doctor's not mean, to get them breathing, and they don't know how to talk, so they, and we know that they're breathing and everything's okay, got a good set of lungs. So now they're out there, they're still in the same position. Well, I don't know how to feed myself, I don't know how to change myself. If I hurt, I don't know what to do. So all they know is the language that they came out with, and that's crying or screaming or whatever. They learn that if they cry doesn't work and they can scream, that works. They'll cry, then scream, or sometimes just go right to screaming. So they don't know. It's not that they're bad kids or that possessed by the devil or anything. It's just that they don't know how to take care of themselves. They're going to rely on mom and dad to make sure all that gets taken care of. Well, they're learning, do this, and this happens. Cry, mom comes running. Scream, dad comes, picks me up. And so they're trained. So when they get a little older, they may understand what it means to do this, but they start crying and screaming, and so right away, parents, okay, you don't have to do that, When they're teenagers and they want to stay out past midnight, and they're not going to cry and scream, they're going to do the other things they found, pout, or just out and out, not come in when you say, and wait for you to see what happens. And they know from experience, you're just going to let them go. So that's why it's so important. Training is so important, and we'll get into life languages in a second because it can be a big help to you. So one of the things you need to observe and learn is the difference between childish behavior and foolish behavior. Childish behavior, pretty much, they don't know what this is, what this means. They're just children. So you have to correct and train, correct and train. When it gets to foolish behavior, they know and do it anyway because they think they can get away with it. Well, you still have to correct and train. There's two different sets of training and correction, and that's not what we're about at this point. That's something completely different. So understand, warnings and consequences at that point. Make sure this is really before, up until they're 8 or 9 years old, they're just sponges. They absorb everything. If you tell them this shirt is red, then they understand that this is red until through other circumstances it's contradicted. After 8 or 9, they begin to develop reasoning power. Well, mom said this was red, but everybody else says, wearing the same color, says, look at my blue shirt. What's going on? I have to reason this out, and so forth. And they begin to reason. That's why your training must be proper. You don't want to lie to them, but train them properly in those regards. Now, Life Languages helps this way in that each child is born with certain character qualities. They're not developed at early ages, but there can be signs that will help you to pick up on their characteristics. And these signs will help you learn how to best get across to that child the point that you're trying to make. We grew up, we learned by the board education, you want to talk about that, our grandparents. Both our parents had to work this right after World War II, and well, maybe you don't, but anyhow, our parents working, our grandparents were pretty much where we were left and who brought us up. You want to say something?
Well, our grandparents were Italian, and especially my grandparents only spoke Italian. So until I learned to understand the Italian dialect, it was mostly learned by showing me or trying to get across to me what they were saying. They didn't write, so they couldn't write anything down. So it was all on example or showing. So until I figured out a few of the Italian words that meant something that I could use in my everyday stay there. But if we don't know a language, we watch. And when we watch, we can learn that way also. So that was one of the ways until I was old enough to understand a little bit of the Italian. That's how we communicated.
Yeah, and if it got too out of hand, we got, shall we say, spanked. I don't know if I can even say that. Good thing they're all passed on, or they'd go arrest them. But we got spanked. If we did this, this is what's going to happen. And a little later on, we realized it was just because they didn't like it that we got spanked, not that it was right or wrong. They didn't like it or didn't have time. Anyhow, they're good folks. You can tell by the way we turned out. But anyhow, that was one way. Well, here's another way, and that's through the life languages. Now, if you've heard me speak before, Angie and I have done some other events with Ruth Ann, and so you know that there's just 7 basic character categories. 6.5 billion people throughout the world, and in those 6.5 billion, only these 7, it's a list of 5 or 6 character qualities come out, and there's other things, education, what we call conditioning, will affect how you use them, but they are there in every person. So with just a little bit of education and observation, you can figure out somewhat what they are. You can't get the details, but you can get an idea, and you want to do that with your children. And so here's how that goes. There are basically 3 groupings, and one group is what we call an action group or kinetic group, and as I said, they're all about action. The other group is the feeling or emotive group, and they're all about feelings and emotions and releasing that stuff. And the third, you want to say a little something about the third?
Well, the third group is organized. They're strategic.
No, they're thinking group.
They're
the thinking group.
They're the thinking group, but they're an organized person. They're focused. They're readers. They're inquisitive. They're intelligent. So these people are thinkers. Yeah, they think. And they will think before they say anything. So if you come across a person that you're talking to and they kind of stop, they're thinking before they say something.
Yeah, we have these 3 categories, and you can watch for them in your children, although especially at the early age it'd be faint, but as they get a little older, even though we don't do the assessment till they're in their teen years, till they've got a little more set in their ways. But we've done this. You've seen this character quality chart on the wall when we've done our things, and so it lists the categories, the character qualities, and you can begin to watch for them and in your child and see. Now they may change because we are a product of all 7, some with greater intensity. So you have to watch and see what intensities might change and grow in the child. And things will affect this, and that's why, at least in the teens, and then again as they get into their early 20s, because now they're beginning to get on life's path, and these might all come into play. So these 3 groupings, and Angie was talking about the thinking group being organized, and so you watch the child. That group is very resourceful. They've thought things out, and so they'll go and mom says do the dishes, and let's see, how can I get this, and they'll either come up with a plan or they'll figure out a way to get their brother or sister to do it. So they're very thinking. The emotive or the feeling group, they're very sensitive. So mom or dad say, hey, it's time for supper, turn the TV off, let's go. And they continue watching because they operate off their feelings first. And somebody goes over, turns the TV off, and right away they start crying if they're younger and say, hey, why'd you do that? Because that's where they are. They're compassionate and passionate, and they're also very intuitive. So you look for some of these things, and if we do further training, you'll get more on that. And then the action group, on the go, all the time, doing something, and there's two really opposite, two different things. But we're having supper, throw the food in, and let's go do something. So you want to tell them about our two boys?
We have two boys. One is action and the other is thinking. So one just always wanted to keep moving, always wanted to do things, mostly outside. The one that was the thinker was more into books and reading and just spending time alone a lot of times. But he was the thinker. And so these two boys were completely different. So, and we didn't have life languages back when they were young, so we just did the best we could. But today, I have to talk to one different than I do the other. And through the life languages, I've been able to learn how to communicate and how to react to them personally. So it makes our relationship a lot better also.
And they grew up to be fine young men.
Yes,
But
they are.
some of it was a rough ride sometimes. But anyhow, if anybody chooses to go further, we're here to help. The more you learn about yourself first, and that's why you take the assessment, you learn about yourself first, and then you can learn how to deal with others because you learned this stuff about yourself. So I think we're a little over time. My apologies for that, but we would have liked to have been there. We're actually teaching a little of this down in a marriage conference in Tucson, so the word's getting out. Ruth Ann and your staff, thank you so much again for allowing us to take this time with you.